All good. Okay, we're gonna bring the meeting back to order, everyone. Thank you for the break, by the way. I realize it's getting a little late in the evening for some of us, but I'm gonna draw our attention back to 7.3, the what we heard report, and we're gonna try and I know that everyone's sort of interested in talking about the finances of the accelerator fund, but I think if we can, just kind of we might stick to the topic about the report and the feedback that we heard from the public just for tonight's meeting, just to kind of push things along. It was a very, very lengthy report prepared by staff, and there was a lot of public input, of course, as you can imagine, which was the point of the report. Does anyone have a specific question or comment about the report that was provided in your packet? Jim.
Yeah, just my final comment, and it goes to KJ's comment before we took the break, is on incentivizing or finding ways to leverage what we have here for affordable housing for home ownership, for whether it's first time homeowners or whatever it might be. That we've talked before about tiny homes, and we've never gotten down the path of truly getting inside those to that secondary suite that looks so good on the screen and so on. And for those of us that don't require a large space to live in and all those things, but also the affordability of a smaller space, that it may be time that we try and look at that more specifically, how we allocate the land and or the space on land to be able to still see that we can do it cost effectively from a municipality standpoint, but reduce that cost for the homeowner or buyer or tenant, as may be the case.
Through you, Chair, just to Jim's question or comment about tiny homes. Tiny homes are actually permitted in the municipality as a single unit dwelling as long as they meet the requirements of the building code. So that's something that we already permit as a single unit dwelling in the municipality. Kind of the combination of maybe a multiple tiny homes on one lot, maybe a group dwelling situation, and that may be something that council wants to look at in terms of where those may be permitted. But just wanted to clarify that we do allow tiny homes as single unit dwellings.
Thank you very much. And I actually appreciate that. And I know that too, that when the town of Windsor previously had I think it's probably still in place, no mini homes. So I don't know how that fixes or juxtaposes against that, but just it's worth it to realize that home ownership has totally changed. Like everything has changed here in the last 7 years from the time, we began looking at the planning documents to the previous presentation and so on, that things have gone day and night between 2019 and now, economically, financially, socially. So it's, yeah, anything on that we can do to try and do a combination of land and homes, and whether it's shared tiny homes on a single lot or whatever it is that. Thank you.
Yeah. We have two hands up. Paul, do you want to go first?
Sure. Just along the same vein as what Jim was talking, and I think what maybe Mark was trying to get to is a project as far as and investing in affordable housing, like the soft costs and the staffing and everything, great doing the studies, but I think we got to get to the point where the municipality actually is willing to invest in land and in supporting the development of, not just supporting, but investing in the development of a project of some sort. We all know we need it. And I'll use the example of Hantsport, and I know that there's some issues related to it, but Macaulay Court in Hantsport was a joint municipal and developer project because Hantsport knew that they wanted more residents and needed residential development. I think that maybe the outcome of what we're doing with the accelerator fund should point us towards a project and maybe what we can do that's tangible and take the lead on it.
No, thank you, Chair. Absolutely, we need to move on and continue the evening on what is necessary. And we have 2 years together in this place, God willing, so there is no rush. However, I'd like to take back on what Kylie said and Mark said and I said, to have more clarity on the utilization of the 1 million that is coming through the HIF. Backtracking right now, I've understood that the allocation of the HIF, the Housing Accelerator Fund, is disclosed to the CHMC, but not necessarily disclosed publicly. Is that correct?
We have a funding agreement with the federal government, which is CMHC, and we have to report as a municipality to them on how we're using the funding. That's correct.
But not publicly.
There's not going to be a public report on how we're using that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Yeah, Kayla.
I was just going to say that I know sometimes we put staff on the spot here when we're asking questions, and we do appreciate you fielding our requests, although sometimes perhaps particularly frustrating, but we do appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to move on from the report. Thank you again, Will. That was excellent. And I think we'll hear more in future about the Accelerator Fund as it moves through, because it's going to be a multi-year process, as you saw. So our next bit that we're going to do is 7.4, which is the Heritage Grant application. This is my first Heritage file since I've been involved with this committee, so I'm really excited. This is for 281 King Street, a property that we all know, and Carrie's going to tell us about this.
Thank you, Chair. So just a reminder, Carrie Fougere, I'm the Manager of Planning. Tonight I'll be presenting the Heritage Grant application for 281 King Street in Windsor. Sorry, I'm just moving my screen around here. Okay, I can see now. So the application was received on October 9th, 2024 from Shirley Pinio, who is the president of the West Hants Historical Society on behalf of the West Hants Historical Society. So the building in question is located on 281 King Street in Windsor. So here's two images of the building that has applied for this grant. So the application received describes proposed work to repair windows on the main building. So that includes repairing window panes, deteriorated wood from the exterior casing, reglazing, painting, and puttying where necessary. This is the first grant application for this property, and the grant is being requested for the maximum eligible amount of $10,000. So we have a list of non-substantial alterations, which was approved by council on November 24th, 2020. And the proposed alterations for this application are not substantial, as they are simply repairs to elements of the exterior where no change is intended, and the work is considered maintenance. So therefore, there's no heritage permit required either. So the municipal grant, the Municipal Heritage Property Conservation Work Grant Policy lists specific work as either eligible or ineligible for funding. And all of the proposed work as part of this application is eligible for funding in accordance with that policy. So just a little bit more detail on the repairs to the windows. So here's some examples of the front windows where you'll see there's some deteriorating wood and casings there. So they're looking at updating all of that and making the necessary repairs. So just a little bit about the funding guidelines. So the grant program provides a maximum grant of $10,000 within a 5-year period for that eligible conservation work. So it's a cost sharing matching basis. So up to 50% of the cost of the repairs will be covered up to that $10,000. Properties are allowed to do 2 incentives per year and a maximum of 10 in a 5-year period. And project costs are based on actual eligible expenses and not any sort of in-kind contributions or work done by the property owner. So in terms of available funds, the 2024-2025 operating budget includes $10,000 as a heritage grant. So that is available. And the Director of Financial Services confirmed there's a reserve of $14,368. So that was from a carryover of the previous year or the previous budget year. And we've had no other applications for funding to date. So just kind of to reiterate, the proposed work is not a substantial change to the main building. So it may be considered for funding under this grant policy, and there are sufficient funds available to fund the request. And just a little bit about process. So we've done our staff reviews, and now we're here at the Heritage Advisory Committee for review and your recommendation. And then from here, we will bring it forward to council, anticipated November 26th for final approval. And that is the end of my presentation. So this is the recommendation. I'll leave this on the floor and can answer any questions in the meantime.
Thank you so much. So everyone's probably familiar with the building on King Street. The Westyants Historical Society are there. Does anyone have anything you'd like to say about this file? I see a couple of lights on. Mark, do you want to go first?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just a comment. I appreciate the work that they're about to undertake with this. I'm a trustee at a historical building. My daughter owns a historical home. I know when they go to do the work, I just want to say this so you can appreciate the cost that's involved with this sort of thing. When they go to do their trim work and around the windows and the roof and everything, they're not just going to walk into Kent and buy wood and pound it up, paint it, and call it a day. A lot of that old historical, hand hewed, it all has to be repeated. So it's a very expensive process to repeat that. So for them to get it done at 10 grand, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I fully support with it. It's fantastic that Shirley's put this together to preserve this building.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Abe, would you like to say something?
I was going to put the motion on the floor.
Sure.
I completely support it. The building it means many things to the community, Chair. Tourism, economic development, history, sprucing it up is a great thing. And I'm proud of Westyants for allowing this type of application and the ease of doing it. I think this may be the 4th application since I've been involved, and each project has been a success. And if you go out and look at them, what these owners of these properties are doing, it's quite great when you look at the project. So I know Councillor Leary Pinch has her light on, so I'll cede to her at this point before I put a motion on the floor.
I was only going to do what you were going to do. So, okay, that HAC recommends that council provide up to 50% of eligible project costs to a maximum of $10,000 to the Westyants Historical Society, owner of 281 King Street, in order to facilitate repairs to windows of the main building located at 281 King Street, and that the funding be provided from account number 01-2-00-26-560-21130, only in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Heritage Property Conservation Work Grant Policy.
Thank you, Councillor.
Second.
Seconded by Jim Ivey there. Further discussion on this file, anyone? No? I kind of feel like this one's a no-brainer for us. Yeah, I'd just like to say, I know that when volunteers work in facilities like this, like having this repaired for them will save them so much time in other ways because they won't have to worry about this. Their focus can be elsewhere. And they're such a wonderful organization of people. So I think what we'll do is just put this to a vote. So the recommendation's been read and seconded. All those in favor, a clear show of hands. Any opposition? I see no opposition. So the motion has passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody. We are going to move on to business arising from, sorry, Jane, 7.5 in my own handwriting, and I still missed it. 7.5, Fort Edward, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Jane for this one.
Thank you. I'm glad that we were discussing the plan review tonight because this aspect has to do with the plan review. And we've seen over the past couple of years, citizen feedback about proposed developments and development agreements come before us and then before council. And I'll use the setback for wind turbines as an example. There were 3 projects that came before council before they considered changing the 1 kilometer setback. So all the feedback that citizens gave to those, I shouldn't say most of them, but the most recent ones, was that if you're going to consider changing the setback, will it change the development agreement you're looking at right now? And the answer was no, because the development application had been received while the 1 kilometer was in existence. So now we're waiting to hear back from the province whether the 2.5 is going to go ahead. So I bring up Fort Edward and the Fort Edward view plane. It is part of the plan review to consider protecting that view plane. However, there is a possibility that a development application will come before council gets to formalize that protection. So I would like to make a motion tonight to recommend that council fast track the protection of the Fort Edward view plane and just leave it at that. And they can figure out how they do that and how they direct staff to do that. But I think if 5 years ago, the council at the time thought about changing the windmill setback, we may not have had the contentious issues that citizens have had to deal with over the past few years. So I'm trying to be proactive and move this along quickly. I have brought this up several times over the past couple of years, and it's part of the plan review. Plan review may not be complete until the middle of next year. We have no idea what applications may come. A 6-story building is encroaching upon that view plane that's already passed. And I hope that's the only encroachment that we see presently. So I would like to move that PAC-HAC recommend to council to fast track the protection of the Fort Edward view plane.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Ivey. I'm going to open the floor to discussion for people about Jane's motion. Would anyone like to discuss this before we put this motion to a vote? Abe, go ahead.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this tonight. It, and in my opinion, it goes against everything that council has been discussing on density within the core. And my experience in the past is off the cuff motions with no background information or dangerous motions to put out there. They're not based on any information or facts. But committee can recommend anything to council and they can do their due diligence at that point.
Okay. Further questions or comments about this? Councillor Ivey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll actually speak in support of the motion, realizing that it's what it would do is trigger further discussion and actually work on behalf of staff to figure out how you would carve out protection of the view plane. There's different areas where you can see to Fort Edward in a unique capacity. And one of those is when you're around the bridge coming from Falmouth to Windsor. And as you make that turn, if you look up, and most of us don't because we have our eyes on the road and that's probably where they should be, but you can pick out Fort Edward almost appearing to be sitting on the roof of what I'll call the Tatum's building but just with a space wide enough that you can actually see the blockhouse sitting there, which is a wonderful thing. You can do the same thing when driving along the 101, and with the trimming that's taken place there in the last few years ago, the view of the blockhouse again also exists, but only for a brief period of time that you can look at it to see it and catch it. There's other areas where you have the same benefit, the ability to view the blockhouse from afar to see it where it's at. And those positions are worth protecting, I think, because that was part of the founding with all its history, both good and bad, that we still have that blockhouse as one of the oldest still standing blockhouses in, I dare say, I think it's North America. But equally, there's the view from the fort looking out, as we talked about before. This came up previously in more detailed discussion when we were talking actually about development of the former Windsor Pool property built in 1967 as part of a centennial project. And so there's views that go out as well. And it's one of those things that is worthy of consideration. Density may come into play, but the conversation we just had, mostly what's coming through in the report is about general density, which shouldn't come into play here. If gentle density is what we see taking place, that's 3 or 4 stories, which is what we have now. It's only if we get into high-rise structures that we start to potentially see impacts on the view planes. And that's, again, a broader further discussion should this move forward. I think it's worth consideration that we look at this and consider this. And for that reason, I support the motion that Jane's put forward, not aware that that was showing up here this evening, but I do have a belief that that's an important aspect of the heritage and culture that we have here. And I think it is worth discussing at the very bare minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't often talk about the heritage aspect of this committee. So it's interesting to see a couple of files in a row. Paul, go ahead, please. I think you're on mute there, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting the motion this evening for a couple of reasons. One is Councillor Ivy's last statement is that he was not aware that it was coming in here this evening, so nor were any of us. So a notice of motion would be appropriate prior to bringing it to the meeting for, as far as a point of order, so that we all know that it is coming. I'm not necessarily in favor of the whole concept, in that, especially the fast track part of it. I know there's a couple of projects out there that may change the view slightly, or some may think dramatically, but I think that it's something that we would need to consider definitely, but I don't see it being fast tracked whatsoever.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, KJ, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to put some support behind this motion that's been put forward today, and just talking from my experience working in economic development in Halifax, when we talk about protecting the view plane of the Citadel Hill. So next to I worked for the Spring Garden Business Association, and a lot of our developers actually worked with us to protect the view plane, because what was happening at the front of Citadel Hill, a lot of developers were building in front of the view planes, and their approach to it was to pay the fines that the municipality was putting on when it came to the view planes. But what we saw as a way of balancing the growth as well as protecting the heritage, saw a unique opportunity to position Spring Garden area and position the uniqueness of the urban core, being the fact that you can have a modern building next to a very historic and significant piece of Canadian history. So when we look at having conversations around the development of our municipality, the fact that this community is one of the the founding communities of our country, we really should be looking at ways of protecting our heritage, but also merging the uniqueness of that through our development at the same time.
Okay. Additional comments?
And I appreciate KJ intervention, and I remember that in Venice, which is one of the most famous heritage sites in the world, not just Europe, they built new things in the middle of Venice, but they did it architecturally in such a manner that you cannot see the distinction, and it's a brand new building on the Canal Grande. And so the relevance of developing the land harmoniously, respecting what came before, to me, is an important aspect of developing this land, so that we don't have to go to Disneyland to be entertained visually, but we can stay in our land and still yet be entertained and feeling the balance and the pleasure of watching something beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Abe, final comments, or maybe not final, but comments?
I completely support looking at our heritage chair and protecting it in appropriate ways and responsible ways. The motion, like I said, I won't be supporting it because I feel it's the intention of it is is maybe something different. And again, committees of council look at certain things. It may recommend something to council, but the fast tracked aspect of the motion, again, doing it responsibly takes time, takes energy, takes lots of study, lots of reports. There is no fast tracked aspect of it. It's not a swipe of the pen and making a change. That's just a couple comments on my end.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, and just one more comment for me. I fully support the motion. I'm very much for protecting identity and heritage and whatnot. And when we do talk about fast tracking, I understand why that's being said, because development is being fast tracked. I think that's kind of the opposite side of that coin. So to keep pace with that and to find some balance, I think as of like this motion should be brought before council and fast tracked as well, or at least the process begun.
Okay. I see no more. Like, is it Paul? Paul, go ahead.
I just forgot to lower my hand, but I do question, you know, as a point of order that this motion could even come forward this evening.
Okay. So I have to confess that I'm not an expert in Robert's rules, or where to really. Mhm.
Chair rules whether the motion is allowed to move forward.
Okay. Okay, so I guess it's down.
Taking into consideration that we approve the agenda with the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. So is the decision that I make to allow us to vote on the motion or to not? Is that I'm asking because I really don't know. Okay. Yep. Okay. I guess I'm trying to to understand what's happening. So Jane, do you want to read your motion one more time for us, please, just so that we have that?
If it makes life simple for everyone, I can withdraw the motion and make it so that it comes up at the December meeting. If that makes life easy for everyone. And so you've got a month's notice that this is going to come up for discussion again. I'm fine with that.
Okay, I have to confess, Jane, I'm not super knowledgeable about like the view plane file. I'm not even sure I would be very comfortable. Like I know I would voting on it, but a month would give me time to sort of, I guess, like refresh myself on the files. If you know, Jim, do you have an opinion or?
The opinion is I think that's fair. And I think it's fair from a couple of standpoints. One, it does allow people to review previous discussions that may have been held on this. It allows people to consider what we mean by fast track, if fast track is meant to jump ahead of other things, or if it just simply means to move forward on it. And also for information to be brought to the table. Hasn't been spoken to here, but there's probably many other things as it relates to developments already, applied for and in the queue. No different than the windmills are automatically in the queue. I think it's a worthy discussion to look at this. And I think Jane's would be correct in considering that we're going to be meeting in 4 weeks' time again. I think less than that. So we'll be back here, and I think that allows everybody to take their time to get their heads around it. Would be and Jane has offered to do that. I think that's really good.
Okay, I think is that okay with you, Jane? Yeah. So I guess the motion's been withdrawn. Is that what no? What do we do with it now? Oh yes, that's right. Okay, Jane, you go. I don't know what's happening anymore with this process. Somebody fill me in. Sarah. Do you know?
I withdraw the motion or table the motion until December. No, we didn't think about it.
Sorry.
Okay, sure. So I guess, Jane, could I just ask both Jane and then our seconder to withdraw the motion?
I'll move to withdraw the seconding, which will allow Jane to bring a report forward in a month's time.
Okay. Does that sound good, Jane?
Sure.
Okay. Are we good, like legally with all the Robert's rules and all that stuff. Everybody's looking around like nobody's really 100% certain. So I think that because we're such an agreeable group that we will discuss this in a couple of weeks for sure. Yeah.
I guess before we move on to something else, could we just give absolute clarity on what it is we'll be discussing? Like there's a fast track has a certain connotation and, move forward for discussion is another, or what exactly are we asking to do? Are we just asking to get this pushed to the next council meeting agenda or?
It's a good question. Yeah, Jane, do you want to?
So as Jim mentioned, I'll bring back a report on the significance of the Fort Edward View Plain and why it should be protected. How's that?
Okay. And you'll have a motion with it as well. Then. Okay. Yeah. So we'll look forward to a presentation next month. That's awesome. I love presentations. Thank you, Jane, for that. So let's see, we're going to move on from business arising from the public information meeting from November the 6th. And yeah, Alex, I guess there were some things to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I'll just provide a summary to our last public information meeting. So that was for an application at 411 King Street in Windsor. This is phase 2 of a 2-part application, and it's for a development agreement to permit a 7-story 60-unit apartment building located in behind the existing church, which has an existing development agreement permitting an 18-unit townhouse. And so that 18-unit townhouse, that is phase 1. This application is phase 2. So at the public information meeting, we had 17 members of the public attend, and the main topics of discussion were on compatibility, stormwater, and traffic. So next steps for staff include following up on all of the inquiries that were sent out to all of our subject matter experts and departments. And then following that, we'll look at bringing a report to PAC. So that's everything for that file.
Thanks, Alex. Any questions for Alex about the King Street development? No. Okay, we're going to move on from business arising from the minutes. So these file updates were all provided in your package, and we're not going to go through them one by one. But what we will do is pause for 1 or 2 or however many. If anyone in the room has a question or needs some clarity given to them on any of the files. Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
9.10 was the mayor, and that's not mine. 9.10, 9.11. No conflict there. Okay. Can we just have you send out the UARB file number for that, Sarah, please?
Yes, I can definitely do that. One additional update that isn't captured in this as well is actually on 9.10, Mayor, if I can speak to that for a second. So we just received notice today that the appellant has withdrawn the appeal on that file. So there's no longer an appeal on that application. It was a development agreement that was approved by council. So we're setting up the developer to come in and sign that development agreement with our staff and then have it registered for that project to move forward.
Okay. Mark.
Yeah, through you, Chair. 9.8 setbacks. I know there's a process, and Jane asked a question earlier about how long it normally takes for ministerial approval to come back. And I'm just wondering if we have any feedback or estimates on when we'll hear from that.
Through you, Chair, to Mark's question. So that's the wind turbine setbacks 9.8. We have submitted the material to the province for their review and approval. We haven't heard any correspondence back from them at this time. So I'm not sure when they're going to get back to us on that.
Chair.
Kayla, go ahead.
Through you to Sarah, is that potentially also because we're in the process of an election? So everything is like halted for at least a considerable period of time?
Through you, Chair, to Kayla's question, I'm not entirely sure. We did submit it before the election was called, and it does go to Department of Municipal Affairs staff for review before it goes to the minister if it needs their review. So I don't think it would have an impact, but I would have to double check with them. I haven't heard either way that it's going to be delayed because of the election.
Additional questions or comments for any of the files that are here? No? Okay. There is a notice from Kings County, I think that maybe Sarah is going to share with us, or someone's going to share with us.
Yes. So I'll send this out to the committee with the
Oh,
minutes.
I skipped something, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, everybody. I'm like, it's been a long night. The building and development activity report is in your report as well, which I guess we have to talk about first. It's on page 168 of your, the last page of your package. And I just wanted to check to see if anyone had any specific questions about that report. No? Okay, sorry, Sarah. Now you can do the update or the notice.
No problem. So we only received one notice from adjacent municipality this month. It was received October 22nd from Kings County, advertising a county-wide land use bylaw amendment to consider bed and breakfast operations in residential units within all zones that permit residential units. So this notice will be sent out with the minutes just for information. A public information meeting was held in Kings County on this topic on October 29th, and staff have no concerns with this amendment, although we'll keep track of what they actually approve in relation to this and see if we want to incorporate anything in the plan review in relation to bed and breakfasts.
Okay. So there's no one here from the public, of course, or not, of course. Usually there is. There's not tonight. So I think what we'll do is kind of wrap the meeting up. I know it's November. I hope everybody had a good Remembrance Day. November 23rd is the Festival of Lights in downtown Windsor. December 5th is Festoon Hansport. I'm trying to think of what else just before I get somebody to dismiss us, but it is approximately 9:07. Can I get a motion to adjourn and we can all go home?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Kayla. I don't think we need a seconder, but just in case, Jim and everybody throw your hand in the air, and thanks everybody on YouTube for tuning in.